Do you think that
Yes, of course. What's going on?
Yes, of course, it's a make or break factor. Yeah. I have a very big question for you today, okay?
Of course, there are different relationships.
So do you think it's just the same Britain
What's this? Are you asking this to me because I'm French?
Just trying to think because you got a big question.
What is this?
Admission card. Sexual fidelity, marriages, my favorite kind of topics. Check.
So my ex said I truly...
So thanks.
Yes, of course, 100%.
But I don't think it's a make or break factor.
So I'd like to welcome all the shooters to the gallery and the program. It's great to have you. We're going to talk about the issue openly until the roundtable discussion ends and we reach a final, united conclusion. So the issue, Shooters asks, is sexual fidelity a make or break factor in a marriage? Why don't we begin with some percentages? How important do you think fidelity is in marriage on a scale of 1 to 100? Okay, we'll start off with a little light round of that, shall we?
For me, maybe to quote Yogi Berra, it's 100% important to marriage. And there are other things that are 100%. But sexual fidelity is definitely at the top of the list.
100%. Anyone else agree?
I totally agree. Sorry. I am French, but I do totally agree.
It almost seems like an oxymoron,
just to make
yes?
it clear,
Yeah.
I actually do think it's 100% make or break.
Okay.
I would not tolerate my partner, and I would not be able to live if I did it.
And Barry, you also raised your hand. Right?
Yes, I absolutely agree with both the gentlemen. Perhaps I'm a little sensitive to the issue because I recently got engaged, but I'd have to say 100% as well. I'd be traumatized if I found out that my partner was cheating on me or committed some transgression like that. So I absolutely agree, 100%.
So 3 men say it's very important, 100% important. I'd like to hear how they... Oh, sorry. Travis, what do you think first?
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with them at 100%. I guess we're going to discuss it a little bit later, but you 3 seem like cold-hearted snakes. 100% no capacity for forgiveness. Or I understand that breaking trust is a big issue to get over because it's all about what? Marriage is honesty. And if you break that trust factor, then yeah, it's going to be very difficult in terms of your relationship. But I don't put it at 100%. I would say about 75 to 80.
Maybe you're just a realist, too. And the other 3 are not cold-hearted, whatever, but they're actually maybe too romantic.
Or maybe I'm idealist. I'm idealist.
Really? You're the idealist?
Because I would think that would be to the extreme.
Well, Travis,
I kind of,
Go ahead,
I kind of agree with Travis on that, like, and like, not because I'm a Muslim and I believe in polygamy, no, but I don't believe in polygamy, but like, my point is that when it comes to interpersonal relationships, it's hard to kind of like put a percentage and to answer in a strict rule or a strict guidelines that will apply in every case. So I think when it comes to adultery and marriages, there are more aspects that are involved. And I don't think that it necessarily should be a factor that would break up a marriage.
So when you say you agree with Travis, percentage-wise, you're saying 75?
It's hard to put a percentage. I would say like 50%, 60%.
Oh.
It depends. Again, I think it depends on the case that we have in hand. So.
You would forgive then?
Well, it depends. And I also expect to be forgiven if there is a common understanding. Of course, I mean, you know, like when it comes to adultery and having extramarital relationships, it's usually a symptom of a dysfunctional relationship rather than a problem by itself. So yeah, that's why I tend to be more, okay, let's see what's the real problem, right?
Let's hear from Zana. What do you think?
Okay. Interestingly, I agree both with Noura and Travis. From the very beginning, I was going, okay, maybe 8 is too much. Maybe I will say 70. And I was expected that I will be criticized by some of the people because Russian community, Russian society, we're in fact more traditional than European. So for me, it's quite shocking that so many guys gave 100%. I think marriage is not just about intimacy, it's about many factors, it's a very complex thing. Right. So my point is 70%.
You know, what's also surprising is, according to statistics, right, most the people who most commit adultery are men, and then we have here most of the men believe that it's 100%.
They could be the exception, or they could be double-faced. We don't know.
I think that there are many X factors as well.
Right.
Because how many of us are married? I know you said that you are engaged.
Recently engaged.
I'm single, but I don't know about the rest of the panel. So
would that be a deciding factor? I wonder, because
I'm
Kevin,
married.
You're married.
Married for 2.5 years, and I just wanted to append my 100% with what Travis said a bit. Forgiveness, I also believe that forgiveness should be 100% in the marriage, which might sound contradictory. How could you have...
It does sound contradictory.
How can you have two absolutes? But for me, that's kind of the wonder of forgiveness, is that it actually can work in so many different ways. And so while I'm 100% committed...
That doesn't make sense.
It's okay. It sounds cool.
But the reason, of course, that we're talking about this is recently in Korea, we decriminalized adultery. And you know, maybe many people said that it was long overdue. Maybe people are saying, oh, this is now going to, now it's just going to open the watershed of adultery and promiscuity. But what about in your countries? Do you have a similar law? Is adultery a criminal act? Can it be punished with prison terms? What's it like in your country?
What's it like in your country?
Well, in my country, obviously there's no law that criminalizes adultery, especially in the Palestinian law. The Palestinian law is very complex. But when it comes to like marriage and like family law, it's the Sharia law, right? So, and of course we know that Sharia law can be problematic at times.
Right. And
when it comes
to quite notorious, isn't it? I think a lot of people, when they think of Muslim and adultery, they think of Sharia or the stoning. I mean, it's quite.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes and no, because I think it's more of like a social practice than it's a religious practice. The stoning, no one really gets stoned, right? But you're socially an outcast. You become a social outcast if you're a woman, right? If you're a woman, then yeah, of course you're shamed, publicly shamed. In cases you might be subjected to domestic violence. In cases you might be just like a victim of what some people call honor killing. Right. So yeah, it's very double. There's a clear double standard.
Actually, the U.S. is different. Our legal system is complicated by the 50 states that we have, and so there's historically always been a tension between the federal level, which is the whole country, and the states, right? And that's the case today. I think it's about half the states still have criminalized adultery in some way or another, but in different ways, with different levels of penalty ascribed to different behaviors. So it's a mix in the U.S., really.
In Russia, no. In Russia, we think that the state should not interfere in the private life of a person, and criminalization of adultery means violation of basic human rights. But not so long time ago, during the socialist time, the state was intervening in the private life of the person. So that's why nowadays people so much against of criminalization of any kind of aspects of private life. So during socialist time, the person could not be sent to prison, but it would affect his social status. For example, he could not be promoted to be director or to be diplomat. Like the whole private life of the people who were above average was scrutinized by communist member. And then
you'd have a file that you would take the adultery.
Yes, and the example communist member should be also example family member. He would not divorce, he could not have lover whatsoever.
Wow. That's difficult, isn't it?
tricky.
Yeah.
So after so many years of communism and intervention into the private life, so Russian people were just tired and not criminalized now.
Well, let me ask you three men who said 100% fidelity is very important. If your spouse was unfaithful, would you report them to the police if it was a criminal?
No.
Certainly.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, that is.
And you wouldn't? Why?
Well, again, maybe it's just part of my British character, but it's behind closed doors. It's not really a public
Call the
affair.
media and get some money.
You could sell the
Yo,
story.
I'm on Arirang TV.
If your spouse is famous,
Right. And Kevin?
I would call shooters, first of all. I think I'd want to talk it through. You know, the people that are involved in our marriage now, who are important to us, I think I would probably reach out to them. I think in times of building a marriage, as well as in times of saving a marriage, I think those are the people that I would reach out to. And the police are not on my phone list for those sorts of things.
Okay, you're very all civil, but let me talk about one sort of maybe not so civil and very highly publicized case. You remember Tiger Woods, of course, and the wife's very public act of revenge, basically, against him. And we've all heard about some sensational cases of spouses taking the law sort of into their own hands and exacting revenge on their spouses. But when it's used, when we use infidelity as revenge, I don't know, what do you think about that? Is taking the law into your own hands, if it's not a criminal act, does that kind of make it okay then?
I think when it comes to revenge and like human nature, infidelity itself, the act itself, doesn't really bring out the revenge because just it's an infidelity. I think what makes people really angry and makes them want to revenge is the fact that their trust has been broken and they've been, misled, and they feel that they've been treated, in an insulting way by their partner and people whom they trust and live with, and have shared so many moments with.
So, Noura, we were 100% sexual fidelity is really important. You were, what was your percentage at the beginning? Was it
50 to 60.
50, right? So if your partner committed
50 to 60.
If your partner committed infidelity, would you only have your trust violated 50% and you'd be 50% less angry?
I would have my trust violated 100%, but it doesn't mean that I want to send him to jail, and it doesn't mean that I want to immediately get divorced. I might go, you know what, maybe we should try couples therapy or whatever therapy.
I guess for me, to be honestly, I don't understand the parameters of what you say revenge as. Are we talking revenge as the person who is not faithful to you? Are you going to do something to them? Or is it revenge that you're going to cheat because they cheated?
Yeah, what kind of revenge are we talking about?
Exactly.
I would never do revenge. I would just have to block out everything and just
That seems very contrary
live a better
to
life
exactly your
them.
100%
That's the
stance,
best
though.
revenge.
Yeah, but that's
Is-
not
Get a better
affecting
life.
them. Well, I guess it's affecting them.
I'm not so sure about that. I think someone who says 100% that it's important to me that they stay faithful, that in a manner of speaking, your divorce to your wife, your unfaithful partner, is a bit of a revenge, is it not? If you have children, there are many different factors that are going to come into play
That would be a revenge.
are so many important things that I don't think you would give up right away just because they were unfaithful.
I
In my
wouldn't divorce
opinion,
my wife if there was an infidelity committed. Even though sexual fidelity is 100% important to my marriage, I wouldn't, as a knee-jerk reaction, get a divorce.
Then what would you do?
Then it's not 100%.
I would be 100% devastated. I would be 100%. I mean, I really. I guess
you're 100%.
what I'm saying is that it really is at the center of our marriage in terms of importance, to the degree of 100%. As in terms of what action we would take, I don't know. Who's to say what would happen afterwards?
Right, exactly. If you're agreeing to enter into a marriage in the first place, that's an inherently aspirational decision in the first place, right? So if you're entering into this aspirational, pact with another person and you're saying you're at 50%, 60%, you're making the wrong decision, right? If you're not going into that decision, that agreement, that relationship, that marriage, right, with 100%, regardless of whether you're pragmatic.
I think that's a completely different issue.
Yeah,
Everyone goes into a marriage 100%
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the aspect of thinking that everything's going to work out. I'm going to be happy.
Or not everything's gonna work out. I'll do my best to make everything work out. You know,
But that's
because
not
there's no one.
100% to do your best. That's
Of
like
course,
75,
I promise
right?
to 100%. You know, be.
When you make the vows, is that not your 100% all-in commitment to that other person? I'm going to spend the rest of my life
But
with you?
the thing is, not everything
But
is
you're not-
under our control as
Yeah,
individuals.
yeah.
So you know.
But you're not making those vows and thinking at the same time, you're probably going to commit adultery. You're not going to adhere to fidelity, right? When you make that decision, you're not sort of tallying up the potential disasters that might occur, are you? You're in. You've committed 100%.
You're not buying a car
so-
and getting insurance.
But I mean, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
Many marriages end in divorce. That's why we have prenuptial agreements as well, right? Are you saying that
But
because
what's
you
that essentially?
aspire
We are
to
all-
100% fidelity, so you would not agree to a prenuptial agreement if
I would absolutely not. And
You would
Yeah,
absolutely not.
and there's just no
100%.
question of
I
I
would.
wouldn't even do it.
That
you
100%.
would.
Well, if we're talking money, yeah, of course.
Of course.
Wait a minute, you would have the
If it's
prenup?
my parents,
You'd have a
if it's
You
my,
would
if
have
it's
the
my
prenup.
parents' money, of course. Yeah.
But I thought 100% you
100 what
aspire
happened to
to
100%?
fidelity
Exactly.
and marriage.
Where
Yeah, but
is
that's
your
even
100%? No.
If there was a lot of money involved on the parents' side, it's probably not even my decision.
I like how you defer to your parents.
It's not my. Yeah, it's my.
Not
But
me,
my
it's
parents don't have
parents'
any money. Don't try and don't marry me.
Dare you.
Actually, with my parents' money.
Okay, taking off the
How
list.
rich are your parents?
I think a prenup undoes the vows, personally.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think that's completely right because you're admitting before you even go into that relationship.
I think that's too naive to think, especially in this day and age. If you marry someone who's like one of the biggest here in Korea, we call them chaebol, right?
Okay,
the
sure.
business associates
Sure.
that are the top of the country. If you're going to get married to one of that family,
Yeah.
but you're not going to sign a prenup because, well, you know,
Well, again, you're making
it's
a choice.
not 100% all in. You know, it's not real love.
You're making a choice between wearing your heart on your sleeve, I guess, and or saying that no, I think that everybody's flawed, and you're probably going to do something awful. So you want to reject that possibility. So
I'm
no,
not
I wanna
disagreeing
hold
with
you
that.
to
I'm not
that point.
disagreeing.
Everyone,
standards.
as humans, we are good,
Yeah.
but we're also bad. That's like real life, right?
You know, the thing about prenuptials for me is that marriage is not a contractual, transactional relationship. It somehow surpasses like the horse trading and making rules and agreements. There's a sort of magic to it. And I've been married a couple years. Okay, I'm not completely naive on this point, but I think dealing with prenups and making these sort of, how do I say, boxes and numbers and rules about marriage, it's not really going to strengthen the inside of the marriage.
But when a marriage dissolves, there are numbers and there are contracts and that you have to think about, right? When it comes to dividing the possessions, who takes care of the
Or, yeah,
children, et cetera, et
custody.
cetera. So you can't go into it with, if everything will just work out and it'll be magic all throughout. You gotta.
I
You don't
guess-
want any provisions in
I think
place?
if you're thinking too much about building your parachute, the plane is never going to get off the ground.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. That's a fantastic way of putting it.
Well, it doesn't seem like any of us would actually send a spouse to jail because
No.
they were unfaithful, but it would make them think twice about whether the marriage could continue. Am I right?
Indeed.
Can I see a little show of hands? Once again, if you would think that sexual infidelity would make or break a marriage, if you agree that it would break a marriage, can I see a little show of hands? Really? I would actually thought.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's-
Okay, save it for
changing.
now. Yes. And I have a feeling that we're going to see this again. So now that we've seen a division, 3 hands up and 3 hands down, we're going to split into 2 teams. Each team will go into their respective armory and come up with statements and arguments to try to convince the opposing team. Okay, so those of you who said, yes, it is a make or break factor in a marriage, will go to the armory on my right, and the opposite team will go to the left. Okay, let's gear up, shooters.
What is the most important thing in a marriage? Is it sex? Is it money? Is it happiness? Is it security?
Understanding.
There's trust.
ultimately,
I suppose what the foundation of any relationship is
you would think
essentially
would be trust,
right? Yeah.
We don't think adultery is a break factor. Marriage is about love, but also marriage is about forgive. Because every relationship is going to be challenging.
Nobody really wins in a divorce, right? You know, we have to set our sights high. That sexual fidelity is really important. I mean, it's not small.
It's
really
a major
important.
issue, of course.
But a marriage can contain so much forgiveness is maybe even more important.
So shooters, you've come back from the armories and you've rearmed yourselves with some arguments to try to convince the other team. We're trying to close the gap in opinion, of course, and each of you have a switch with a minus and a plus button. You're all starting out with 10, which represents your stance right now on the argument. But each time you're persuaded or you agree with the opposing team, you can press minus. And if you're once again persuaded to your original argument, you press plus. And hopefully, by the end of this argument, we'll have come to a middle ground. Now, you will not be aware of each other's stance. Only the audience and I will be aware of that. So until we reach that middle gap, we'll try to convince each other's side, okay? So now let's open fire. Why don't we begin with the affirmative side, the yes side. You say that fidelity, sexual fidelity, is a make or break factor in marriage. Why?
Well, who wants to do the honors? Who wants to read our statement? Kevin, do you want to?
You got the
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, I think that
Oh, really? Well, we're presenting a united front already. Well, our statement. Our statement that we came up with was essentially about trust. So we said that relationships equal trust. Relationships equal trust, and if there's no trust, then you can't have a relationship. And that's essentially what we're saying. So trust is the foundation of every relationship. Relationships are, in effect, in essence, they are based on trust. And without any kind of trust, then the foundation, the bedrock of your relationship is unstable and unsatisfactory.
Okay, so Barry said about trust. Yes, when we get married, we expect to trust each other. We expect that our marriage will be happy forever. And of course, each of us tries to do our best to make our marriage happy. But imagine that one day you discover that your wife is cheating. I'm sure that it doesn't happen out of the blue sky. In most of cases of adultery, there is some reason behind cheating. There is some deeper symptoms. So we come to the conclusion that adultery is a symptom of some deeper problem in the marriage. So why don't you find this symptom, this problem, and try to fix it?
Yeah, but if there's problems and she's cheating, then you should probably stop the relationship.
Well, actually, I want to go back to the point or the position coming from Barry, basically, or from all of you guys, right? So your position is that trust, right? Trust is very important for a relationship in order to continue. But also, I think, again, I think it's very, in a way, naive and very unrealistic, right? Of course, trust is important, but that's not the only thing that keeps relationships going, right? Understanding, forgiving, being able to grasp that your partner is a human being, just like you, and sometimes you make mistakes, other people make mistakes too. Of course, trust is an important, probably the most important thing in relations, but we think it's not like if it's broken, then you can't rebuild it. We think it's something that is continuous, and there's a space for working on it and perhaps maybe improving it,
I believe that, of course, you can work on trust, but what you're trying to say is that can we work on our trust after you already broke the trust?
Of course.
Okay, we can work on it, but what we're trying,
if the trust
we can work on it, yes, of course, 100%, but what we're trying to say is that it is a breaking factor for us. So if you break that initial trust as a male-female relationship, a sexual relationship, for us, breaking that trust, even though that you can build our trust back,
we don't want to be with you. We're going to get a divorce. That's what we're saying.
And then what
because
happens
that's a
after?
breaking factor for us. I mean, I believe that we have all have the capacity to forgive, that we all can work on the relationship for whatever factors that there are coming into play, whether there's like finances, whether it's children, whether any other things that are important for us. It's not that we're robots, that we think that it was an easy decision to get a divorce, but we can't trust this person. So you know what? I might still love you, and I can still work on the trust, but guess what? We're going to get out of the relationship because
Let's talk about cases where there are kids, right? Because it's very like self-centered. Also the position that is coming from you guys. If I can't trust you, I can't be with you, right? So what about other people that are involved that are equally important and they're equally, you know?
So are you suggesting that it's better for a married couple to stay together for their children, even if there's been an issue of infidelity?
I think
you think it's better to raise a family in that environment? Or one partner has to suffer for a decade and a half until the children go to university and then it's acceptable for them to get a divorce?
Well, okay, I'll tell you what I think, right? I think that once you decide to have children, then your decisions, your life decisions, stop being all about you. Then you have to take into consideration kids that they didn't ask to be born into this world, but because of your, you know, selfish or I don't know, desires or instinct to have children as a mother or as a father, you decided to have a a child or one or two. And then, you know, once you do that, your decisions need to be not completely revolving around your children. While some parents think that it's true, but they like a big chunk of your consideration need to be focused on children.
It depends on the level of your relationship. If you are arguing all the time, you can't stay with your partner and have the children witnessing this.
Yeah, of course.
Children aren't stupid. They're
We're
going to know
talking
that
about
there's
sexual.
something.
We're talking about sexual fidelity here. Right now, it seems like both sides are very opposed, and it seems like you haven't budged at all. But one of you have budged on each side of the team.
Really? You know, I want to talk about trust because that's really your main point, right?
You look like you.
It is indeed.
Okay, so now we know.
How you doing?
The thing is, I agree with you guys so much that trust is actually
agree more.
I will, but I want you to think about something else. When we think about marriage as a set of rules, right? Like sexual fidelity is a rule that you cannot break. Or maybe there's another rule. If you spend all my money on Prada bags, right? If there's a set of rules, being that we are imperfect, we'll never be able to keep all of those rules. And you might say, well, you don't have to. You have to keep the big ones. But actually the small ones, as you said, can snowball. And even though I don't think my wife would divorce me over not doing the dishes, if I didn't lift my finger a single time in our marriage to do the dishes or to help, I think she would. And she'd probably have a right to. So what I'm saying is that these issues, we can never really be perfect. We can never fulfill.
Okay, I agree with you 100%, but you're talking apples and oranges.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if I don't do the dishes, as opposed to my wife cheating on me,
it's totally different.
Why? It says something about your, like, you know,
so
your
you're saying all
personality.
these
You're not willing
small
to
little
help.
not doing the dishes and all these little
Let me
problems
finish.
are like equal to infidelity.
You know, actually, I'm willing more to divorce someone if he doesn't do any dishes, if he doesn't do anything, any help in the house, than someone who just committed a mistake and like cheated on me for once. Because I think it's a lifestyle. You know what I mean?
So what's the number then? 3, 4?
I don't know. Maybe work it out. Try to see. It's
Five.
not really about.
There's a corollary to what I was saying.
It's not about numbers.
These really important issues will never sustain a marriage, okay? We say these things are so important, right? But even if somebody keeps the rule of sexual fidelity, that actually won't, that's not enough to sustain a marriage. So what we need is something more powerful than some rules. And what is that? I mean, what is something that's bigger than fidelity, that's bigger than finances, that's bigger than children? And I think actually the answer is forgiveness. That if you, now, just go with me for a minute. If you go into a marriage saying that, yeah, fidelity is really one of the most important things, but if you also go in saying that forgiveness is even bigger, and forgiveness is beyond what you can imagine, I think that'll give you the trust that a marriage needs.
Did you even hear what I said before?
Well, it's not about dishes.
I said that we don't have a problem with forgiveness. It's just we're going to get
Except that we can't do it.
Except that you're not willing to forgive. It sounds like you're not willing to forgive.
Why is
right?
getting a divorce, but actually having a relationship and learning to forgive that person not the same thing?
It could be. It could be.
Because we're learning to forgive this person. We just chose, because you broke that trust factor, that we're getting out. But if we want to build on the relationship, it's okay. We'll build on forgiveness. We'll build on trust again. But initially, because you broke that trust factor, we're out.
Well, we agree with. I think we agree with them on some points, right? And I'm just going to say those points, so it will make it easier for us to
so they can
have
avoid
some
the question.
kind of in relation to the whole discussion. So we agree that trust is a major issue, right? If you don't have trust, you can't have relationship.
Okay.
You can't actually have possible functional relationship with someone unless you trust them. That's like the ABC of humanity, right?
I think we entirely agree.
And we agree with you on that point. However, we don't think that trust is something that is that fragile. That once it's broken, it can be like mended, it can be fixed, right?
Can you describe a relationship subsequent to an incident of adultery? Walk me through a day, a week,
treason,
or a month.
You know?
Or tell me how that feels.
I don't know, committed. I don't know. Many mistakes.
I don't hear any examples.
So, okay, let me. They're coming. So I think there are many cases which my trust can be broken other than adultery, right? Let's say if...
For example,
Well,
financial. Let's talk about finance, okay? Because
Yeah.
as a married person,
a discussion with mother-in-law.
When-
He must
there's always in-laws. But let's talk about the money issue.
That's worse than adultery.
When it comes to a married couple, and let's say for the sake of the children, maybe the wife or the husband, one spouse decides to give up their job because they want to care for the family. It could be for a child, it could be for an adult. And so the other spouse then has the responsibility of providing for that family. Of course, there are other external issues in which they are maybe laid off or whatever, but in which they make irresponsible choices and are left leaving the family at a very unfortunate financial situation. Then they could say they have broken their trust.
Okay.
In that respect as well.
I think that we don't agree that there are certain extraneous circumstances or some other things that would allow us to be a little bit more benevolent to the person who is doing these things, not cheating, sorry, doing these things to us. But for us, like if they cheat.
You know,
well, it doesn't seem like we're making any headway. So just to take a little break, let's see what the average Korean thinks on the street. Let's take a look at the VCR now.
법적으로 하는 것보다는 그냥 이혼을 하는 게 낫지 않을까요? 결정적으로 좀 많이 영향을 미칠 것 같아요.
I feel like sex is an important thing between a couple, so it should. Once that breaks, the marriage should be over.
감옥까지는 뭐 굳이 보낼 필요는 없고 제 생각엔 그냥 빠빠이 서로 안녕하는 게 서로한테 좋을 것 같아요.
외도하면 결정적인 요인이 된다고 생각하는데요?
이혼만 해야죠. 두 사람은 서로 믿기 때문에 결혼한 거 아닌가요?
한 번 외도한 사람은 계속 외도할 것 같고 그래서 전 예스에다가 표를 찍었습니다.
자식 때문에 다 유지되는 것 같다는.
꼭 외도만이 결정적인 요인은 아닐 거라고 생각해요. 외도할 만한 요인이 따로 있을 거니까. 육체적인 신뢰가 깨졌지만 서로 마음이 맞으면 다시 돌릴 수 있는 거니까. 외도는 할 수도 있었지만 외도를 하게 한 본인의 잘못이 있으니까.
So you saw that most people on the street said, yes, it is a factor that will break a marriage. But the last interviewee raised a very important point, saying that oftentimes it's not only the person who committed adultery that is to fault. Usually the other spouse played a part in it too, in some one way or another. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, that was one of your arguments, right?
Yes, yeah, we agree.
It's like underlying.
We think
problems.
when a relationship hits rock bottom, it's both partners' responsibility. It's never.
Don't
it's like
cheat in happy marriages.
Right.
It's never one person to blame for all the mistakes and all the.
Right. So is it fair then to blame the breakup of the marriage on the one or many
we're not
instances
blaming,
of
we're just breaking up,
fidelity?
that's it. We're just divorcing, we're not blaming anymore, we're just, okay, well, obviously it's not working.
But you're almost using it as a trigger now to break up the marriage.
It is totally a trigger. And it's kind of like a symbol of like, oh, it's obviously not working.
I think it's very selfish of us, our stance, in a way, I have to admit. Because even though I thought your argument about forgiveness and about societal claims, or just how you said that overall, all over the world, that it's not an issue in Fidelity. I think for us, initially, if you're speaking to us right now, that's how we answered, right? That we would, and it was because of the trust factor. But at the same time, I mean, if you were to paint like the picture for me, if it was applicable, maybe because you guys are married and because we're single, it's very different. But at the same time, if there are deeper problems, because I've had friends that have told me before that they love their wife and they love their kids, they love their life, because everything extraneous looks perfect. But they did cheat on their wife, and their wife doesn't know. And I really feel for that relationship, because I don't know if it's just the underlying problem, because he's selfish, because he wants to have another relationship. He wants something different. Maybe their sex life isn't good. But I don't know, right? So, I mean, I would really want to agree with being able to forgive and to forget and for everything to work out. But the reason why I'm so obstinate about not seeing some of your points valid is because you're talking to me. Yes, I'm not thinking in a broad view. I'm thinking in a selfish view.
Can I paint a picture for you, a hypothetical?
Okay.
And we'll just see where it goes. And I know, hypothetical is not fair, but let's give it a try. Can I ask how old you are? Okay, let's imagine that you're 60, nearing the end of your career, entering the golden years. You've got a wife you've been married to 30 or 40 years. 30 or 40 years of 365 days a year of support, love, you have children, you're part of a community, you're part of a network of friends. And imagine, I don't know, you or her, right? Either one of you, imagine that one person had transgressed at the beginning, in the first 5 years. Would you be willing to completely throw away the 30 years of that beautiful blossoming? Now, it might take 10 years, right, to rebuild. And this is all hypothetical. But imagine how incredible a marriage could be. And what if it was just that one thing?
You're 60, right?
I'm 55.
But the way
I'm
he's
on my way.
framing
Maybe you're
that
younger.
the reason why he's framing it that way is if you had continued with the marriage, you would have enjoyed 25 years, 30 years of happiness and a whole bigger family. But if you could not forgive
because you didn't know.
If you hadn't known,
Which is the
key point there.
That's another point. Yeah, I don't think we wanted to go that far.
Well, there's two different ways, right? Didn't know, maybe you find out later, or maybe you knew and you worked through it. I don't know. It's two different things. But couldn't you say it would be worth thinking about, to save the marriage? That's actually worth thinking about.
For me, it's kind of like if there's kids, okay, it's a different issue. If there's no kids, I feel if you're staying in the marriage, you're scared of being alone, and that's just being weak.
But you see, I feel that it's a little bit like judgmental.
Straight up.
It's a little bit judgmental.
That's it. You're just being weak. Oh, I can't find someone else. I'm just going to stay with this person.
Not necessarily.
So many people in the world.
You might say, I want to give this person a second chance and see where it goes. We do concede, right?
Just one thing I didn't say, sorry. Is also, we just, you made one mistake, you were drunk, blah, blah, blah. I feel like there's so many steps involved in cheating on someone. There's meeting up, there's kissing, there's going on the steps. I think there's like kind of steps where you can go like, okay, stop. There's so many steps you can go stop. And I feel like this kind of just what makes me feel like I could not forgive someone because this went through their brain so many times. Oh, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do this.
But what about your part of the deal, Probably if your partner is going through some kind of like a really hard time or is really miserable in the marriage, don't you have, as a partner, don't you have a little bit of responsibility towards what's happening? This is my first point. My second point is that we do concede about that it is a problem, right? We don't think infidelity and like cheating is not a problem. We do agree with you on that, right? But we think that as most problems, they can be fixed, right? Especially since we're dealing with human beings and not versus states. When it comes to states, they're units, right? It's different. But with human beings, it's very flexible. You can adjust, you can work things out, or you can't, right? But you will never know unless you try. So that's what we are arguing for. We don't want it to be a rule. We don't want everyone who went through adultery to go straight to divorce. because we don't think we think basically it will have more harms.
And I don't think we're saying that if you go through adultery, then you have to stay married and you have to work it out. But I think we're just arguing against that. If it happens, then it's just done.
I think maybe another sort of factor here is the importance of sexual relations in a marriage. I mean, one of the interviews on the street said sex is very important in a marriage, and once you break that sexual trust, that fidelity, then the trust in the marriage is broken as well. But, you know, in many marriages right now, maybe also in Korea and also more long-term marriages, there are sexless couples where they are perfectly happy in their marriages, but there is no sex. And whether they find sex outside of the marriage or they're happy with no sex at all,
it depends on the culture.
Depends on the culture. But we're talking about sexual fidelity right now. So
but there's also cases where, like, one of the couples is committing adultery, and they have a really functional sexual life with their partners because they feel guilty, you know? So
because they feel guilty.
Yeah,
that's
you know,
true,
spices
that's
things
true.
up. Or, you know, I don't know, or it just enhances somewhat, regardless to the, you know, the reason behind it. But their sexual life is functioning.
Zana, what about your case? I mean, in Russia, you said that sexual fidelity or infidelity is not even one of the top 10 reasons for divorce.
Yes, because sex is important for marriage, of course. Russians, we are quite notorious. But we also think that marriage is not about sex at all. It's about people and connections and partnership. And that's very interesting because our team is married people and another team is not married people. So what is the difference between marriage and just relationship, preparation for marriage? There is a huge difference because we know from our own experience that marriage is about love and commitment. Yes, most of all it's about commitment and compromise, and it's hard work. So people who already invested so much effort to build relations, to have children, some houses, property, they understand how difficult just to say goodbye to everything because of very small act.
I understand what you're saying.
Such
I
a
still
soothing
can't get
philosophical
past
voice.
I'm just like,
We're all like,
I get over
interrupt
that.
you. I'm just like,
Yeah, were you
just feel like,
persuaded?
oh, this is the
I know.
But were you persuaded?
I'm just kind of
By
lost
her
in the
voice.
voice. It's awesome.
Keep going.
Best voice.
You almost got him. You almost got him.
Shooters, we've reached bullseye. We have. Implausible as it seemed, the yes side has been persuaded by the no side and saying that sexual fidelity or infidelity is not a make or break factor in marriage. Now, I don't know if you've come 100% over to this side. I don't think so. So now what we try to do is try to reach a statement in which all of us can agree on. And since the no side sort of won the argument, maybe we can give you the first try at the statement.
Okay, we can formulate like infidelity is an affront to marriage, but it's not a make or break factor.
Yeah, good. How about
We
Need to add
definitely want to add something to the end of that. We need a clause in there to do with trust, right? We need something that addresses trust in there, but along the lines of unless the trust can't be fixed, can't be repaired, restored. Yeah. So as long as we address trust in the final statement, I think we'd be
because you guys agree that if you can't build the trust back, then
I think so. I think we're fully in agreement on that. Yeah.
I agree.
Nice to hear.
So if we append something simple, just unless trust cannot be repaired, would that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if we brought that together, infidelity is an affront to marriage, but it's not a make or break factor unless trust cannot be repaired.
Sounds
Fantastic.
fantastic.
Okay. So shooters ask simple questions, but the answers are never simple. And the bullseye for this week is that, once again, infidelity is an affront to marriage, but it's not a make or break factor unless trust cannot be repaired.
That's right.
Yes, that's right.
That's all for this week then. We'll see you all again next time for more shooters. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you guys.
All right.
This was
Yes.
like, you know.
I'm terribly sorry. I
Thank
need to forget your name.
Thank you. We did it.
Thank you. Absolutely. No, it's all, it was a pleasure.
Thank you for guiding. Yeah, thank you for moderating.
Travis.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't want to meet you in a corner.
We were very glad to share our experience. Yeah,
Did
who pressed the first button?